Hey everyone, and welcome out to the Single Player Podcast. I'm your one and only host, I'm 16-Bit, and I got a good show for you this week. We're going to be talking about the problems at Activision Blizzard, as well as a possible new Nights into Dreams game, and problems with the Nintendo Joy-Cons. So stick around, and we'll be right back after this. Alright folks, so for a moment I want to talk about Activision Blizzard because things do not look good for the company right now. Last year they had, I think it was the price of their stock dropped by 45%. The Call of Duty series has been dropping in sales ever since Ghost. And then there's the state of Blizzard, which is just, Blizzard, what are you doing? I mean, you have Overwatch League, which by the end of its first season, its viewership had dropped by 54%. You have the whole Ellie controversy that happened earlier this year. You have the drop in playership of Hearthstone and Heroes of the Storm. You have a drop in subscriptions for WoW. Actually, that's been going on for the past several years. And then you have the state of Diablo. and Diablo Immortal, and the reaction to that, which was not good. And I don't blame people for having a fit about it, because honestly, it's bullshit. Okay? Diablo Immortal is nothing more than a knockoff of Diablo that was already released and is now being rethemed to Diablo. That's it. That's all it is. So right now, things are not looking good for the company. And it seems that things might not be looking good for it in the future if a investment firm gets what they want, and that is to have Disney buy out Activision Blizzard. In an interview with Bloomberg, the firm Gerber and Kowalski explained that they want Disney to buy out the company, quoted as saying, "Ideally for an investor, you want this to happen now." Now, here's the thing. I know they want this to happen, but I don't think it's going to happen. And I'll tell you why. Because Bob Iger does not want it to happen. Back in, I think it was February, during an investors meeting, he was quoted as saying that Disney was more interested in licensing their properties out to game companies than actually publishing and developing their own games. And this is, I mean, you can see this today with stuff like, for example, EA and their whole Star Wars line. You've got the fact that Square Enix is releasing an Avengers game, and then more recently you have Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, which was published by Nintendo, developed by Team Ninja. And if you think about it, that's always been kind of true for Nintendo. Disney, where they are not really interested in publishing their own games. I mean, look back in the '80s. Look back at, like, for example, the fact that every Disney game released on the NES was developed by Capcom. Okay, even going up into the middle of the Super Nintendo generation, which I think towards this later half of the 4th gen, it started changing and went up. Because I remember playing games like Mickey Mania and Toy Story, and those were developed by Sony and Virgin Interactive. So Disney has always been licensing this stuff out. They've never really had an interest in developing their own games. So no, I don't see Disney buying Activision Blizzard. But let me tell you, it seems that things are also going to get worse for the company, because it was also announced just the day after this news broke, this interview, it turned out that Blizzard co-founder Frank Pierce is leaving the company. He's been with it for 28 years. In fact, he co-founded it alongside, of course, Mike Morhaime and Alan Adam. Of course, that was back when the company was called Silicon Synapse. Interesting fact, by the way, Blizzard in its 28 years has gone under 3 names. The first of which was, of course, Silicon Synapse, then Chaos Studios, and then finally Blizzard. But he said, "This time has come for me to step away from Blizzard and pass the torch to the next generation of leaders. Looking back, I know how incredibly fortunate I was to have been part of what Blizzard has become." Honestly, I think right now he did the best decision by leaving the company. Kind of reminds me of what Mark Kern said. If you don't know who he is, Mark Kern is a game developer. He was the producer of Diablo 2. And he was also, I think, the creative director of World of Warcraft, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that. If I'm wrong, let me know. And so he has talked about on Twitter about his time at Blizzard and just sort of the bullshit he had to deal with there. And he talks about, but the one that's interesting is he's talked about, like, when he decided to leave and when he realized things were changing in that company. He said that it happened right after the launch of WoW, and how he was brought into a meeting and told that basically he had to, like, lay people off. And he was trying to explain to them, like, hey, we're not really, like, we're more of a family around here. We don't really like to fire people and all that kind of stuff. And he was outright told, yeah, well, we're a real company now. And that was basically, he has said that was the moment he realized that I'm done with this company. That's it, I'm leaving. And since then, he's been working on a whole bunch of things. I think one of the games he worked on was Firefall, and now he's working on a game called Ember, which looks interesting. But yeah, no, it seems things have started to go really sour in that company. Things started going sour in Activision Blizzard years ago. And especially on the Blizzard end, and now it's starting to get really worse. I'll tell you, here's another thing I just thought of as well. I'll tell you why also their financials aren't doing very well. And it's because Activision for the past, over a decade at least, has been mostly getting their money from what has been their major franchises. It's been Guitar Hero and Call of Duty. But here's the thing. When Guitar Hero started drying up, Call of Duty was at its absolute zenith. So it was like as soon as one died out, another one picked up for the other one. And now what's their major moneymaker? Destiny? I don't think so. It's not really doing well. So the whole company is going south. And I'll tell you what, though, this isn't the worst time in Activision's history. Oh no, you want to see the lowest point in Activision's history? Look no further than the late '80s and early '90s, the Mugenical era. Oh, this is true, by the way. In the late '80s, Activision decided that they didn't want to just do video games. They wanted to do more stuff, and so they decided to rename the company to Mugenical, to have 4 different branches, 3 of which would develop games, so 1 would develop and focus on business software, and they mostly focused on business software. Yeah, I'm not making that up, folks. It wasn't until Bobby Kotick bought the company that he decided, okay, no, we're going to be making mostly video games, and renamed it to Activision. So there's at least one good thing that Bobby Kotick has done. But anyway, folks, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this. Alright, folks, and we're back, and I'm going to talk about something that came up a few days ago. Apparently, it came out that Sega has trademarked the title Knight's Dream Wheel. Now, as we all know, Sega has a previous franchise called Knights in the Dreams, and so, of course, people started immediately thinking that, oh my god, this is going to be a new Knights game and all that kind of stuff. And that would be the easy sort of conclusion. I don't think that's what's going to be, though. If this is going to lead into a game, okay, and it's possible it's not even going to be a game. It could be, I don't know, a pachinko machine or whatever Sega, because I know Sega does make, like, they do make pachinko and arcade stuff. It could be that. It could be a slot machine. I don't know. But if anything, it's possible. Most likely, it'll from the title. It would probably be like a mobile game. That's what I think it would be, like a gotcha sort of game, kind of like Fire Emblem Heroes in a way, or was it Fate Grand Order? That's probably what it'd be like, where it's just, I don't know. Anyway, though, what's interesting is that it wouldn't surprise me if Sega did come out with a new Knights game. Because they've sort of been on this trajectory lately of sort of embracing their past. I know they've done that in the past. They've released all sorts of collections and all that kind of stuff, but it's been a lot more lately. You know, they've been putting out a lot of classic Sega games on the Nintendo Switch. They're coming out with the Sega Genesis Classic, I think in September. And then in October, they're releasing the remake of Panzer Dragoon, which I'm really excited for, because Panzer Dragoon is one of my favorite Sega franchises. It's a underrated series. Go check it out if you haven't. Just great rail shooter. And so it's possible that there could be a new Knights game. But again, we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, when was the last time there was another Knights game? I think it was Journey into Dreams was the last one for the Wii. When was that? It was 2007, right? That was like 12 years ago. So, you know, I'm not sure if Sega would be willing to come out with a new Knights game after 12 years. But, you know, stranger things have happened. Look at Shenmue. It's been nearly, it's been 15 years? Has it been 15 years since Shenmue 2, and now suddenly Shenmue 3 is coming out? I think, is it next year or this year? I don't know, man. But if anything, there's possibility that this could also end up like other games, because this happens. Companies will trademark a title, it'll get people really excited, and then there's nothing for years. And then eventually the title just sort of expires. This happened. Case in point, Chrono Break. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about this. For those who don't know, back in 2001, Square Enix trademarked the title Chrono Break. And this got a lot of people excited because Chrono Cross had come out the year before, and people were like, oh, are they finally going to do a sequel? And then there was nothing. Just nothing for several years. And one by one, because they trademarked it in all three major territories, US, Europe, and Japan. And then one by one, the trademark expired in each of the regions. Like, it expired in the US, Europe, and Japan. And I think over the years there's been interviews and such, and just sort of came out that Square wanted to do it, but then there was like half the development team didn't, and then half the development team did, and they just decided not to do it. So there's that possibility. Okay? And then there's the possibility I could be wrong and it is a nice game. I don't know. But I always like to tell people, never go into things with high hopes or thinking that this is actually going to happen, because you're just going to set yourself up for failure. I say this every E3. Don't go in with high expectations. Don't think that the game you want is going to come out. You know, yes, a company will trademark a title. Doesn't mean that they actually will release that title. You know, it happens all the time. You know, I've seen It just sort of annoys me whenever I see people, they get themselves all excited that a company is going to do something. Oh, I heard a rumor that they're going to do something. Or this trademark came out, and then it just doesn't happen. I remember people getting completely butthurt over the fact that there were rumors about a new Kid Icarus game for the Wii. And then nothing for several years, for like several months. E3 came, didn't happen, and then it turned out like there actually was, but it was basically like canceled or whatever it was. But that's the problem. Like I said, people they hear things that they want to believe, and then when it doesn't happen, they get themselves all pissed off and they set themselves up for failure. So don't do that. Don't go into this thinking that, oh, this is it, Sega's going to do a new Knights game. I would love a new Knights game. Okay? Journey of Dreams was, okay, it was kind of meh. But I like the HD version. And, it's a fun game. It's a really good one, especially Christmas nights. That's become sort of a Christmas tradition of mine, is to play Christmas nights. Because I actually do own the demo disc. And that's a fun one. But if you've never played Knights, definitely check it out. I think it's still on Steam. And I think the HD version is also still available on PSN and Xbox Live. I could be wrong, because I haven't checked in years. But if it's there, go definitely check it out. But in the meantime, just be patient. Wait until this stuff is announced, and then be excited. That's what I always say. Until it's confirmed, don't you believe it. And so... All right, folks, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this. Alright folks, and we're back, and I want to talk about the Nintendo Switch Joy-Con issue for a bit, because this is really interesting. Some of you may have heard about it, some of you may have experienced it, but for those who don't, the Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons have an issue with drifting. And to quickly explain what that is, basically it's when you don't touch any of the buttons or the analog sticks, but it still registers movement. That's drifting. Anyway, this has been an issue with the Switch since launch, and it's widespread. Even I've experienced it, though not on the same scale as many have. My issue it's only been maybe once or twice it's happened, and it's only happened on the main menu. It's never happened mid-game, which is, maybe it's good for me, or maybe it's a bad sign, shows that my Joy-Cons are going out. Nintendo does actually offer a repair for the Joy-Con issue, but your mileage may vary, because some people have reported no problems and some have reported getting theirs, and then a few months later the drifting issue comes back. So you never know. But what's interesting here is that apparently Vice, according to Vice, they've gotten a hold of a memo that from a Now, Nintendo does actually have a repair service for this issue. However, your mileage may vary. Some have reported no problems, and some have reported the problem returning months after getting the Joy-Con. So, you never know with that. But it seems, according to Vice, that Nintendo may be changing their opinion on this whole thing, changing things on this whole thing, because apparently they got an internal memo from a customer service representative stating, and I quote, "The company will no longer charge customers seeking Joy-Con repairs and refund those who've already paid." Now, this comes from an anonymous source. So, my whole thing with that is you take it with a grain of salt, because we've seen that in the past where, we've seen reports from anonymous sources, half of them turn out to be true, and half of them turn out not to be complete BS. So you never know with that. But again, the timing is a little too perfect, because a few days before this report came out, another report came out that a class action lawsuit is being filed against Nintendo for this very same issue. So you never know. I mean, it's just, like I said, the timing is just, it's too perfect for this not to be complete BS. But hey, sometimes, like I said, you gotta just, hold back and wait to see if Nintendo does anything about this. Nintendo has offered free repairs in the past, from what I remember. I remember there was a problem with the DS Lite. It had a problem with the hinges cracking, and so Nintendo did offer a free repair for that. And then there was the Wii, because when Smash Bros. Brawl came out, it was the first Wii game to have a dual layer disc, and so some of the Wiis had dirty lasers and couldn't read the game, and so they offered a free lens cleaning service for that. That actually did happen to me. Actually, both happened to me. Actually, my DS Lite had the hinge cracking, and they were able to give me a free repair for it. And same thing with the Wii. Had the problem with the disk drive not reading discs, and they offered a free lens cleaning. So, it's interesting, because most companies usually are reluctant when it comes to free repairs. Like, I don't think Microsoft or Sony ever offered free repairs for the Yellow Light of Death or the Red Ring of Death. So, hey, at least Nintendo is willing to do in that regard. Though the fact that they've let this go on for 2.5 years and have only offered some repair, just one small repair service, even though this is a widespread issue, I find that a little, kind of confusing, because like I said, whenever an issue like this comes and it's as widespread as it is, Nintendo usually jumps on it and usually has a repair service right then and there. So, I don't know what's going on with that, but hey, it's Nintendo. You never know with them. By the way, speaking of Nintendo, apparently earlier this afternoon, Bethesda announced that they're releasing the classic Doom titles on the Switch the Xbox One and the PS4. Now, on first glance, this sounds awesome because, it's Doom 1, 2, and 3, and hey, I'd like to have those games on the go. However, it seems there's a bit of a caveat because it requires Bethesda's own sort of service, and on top of that, you need to have a constant internet connection. It's the most bullshit thing I've ever heard of. Oh yeah, because you totally needed a constant internet connection to play Doom, right? You guys all remember that? You remember having to need that while playing Doom on the PS1? It's totally ridiculous, folks. This is what gaming is going into. This is what they're going to do to all the classic games. They're going to start making you have all these accounts, and you have to constantly have an internet connection. It's ridiculous. It's getting ridiculous. It's getting to the point where you can't even have offline modes anymore. Well, okay, it's not that far, but we're getting there, folks. It's getting ridiculous. I wish Bethesda would just, put out an update ending this, getting rid of this whole thing, because it's ridiculous. Alright, folks, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this. Alright, folks, and that's it for this week. I want to thank you all for listening, and always remember that video games will never die.